Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Okay, so the piece that we have coming up next is called If I Knew Then What I Know Now. And this is actually my testimony piece, and I didn't know this was my testimony piece until I read through it, and I was like, yeah, this pretty much sounds like my life. Originally, I wrote this piece for a group of creatives that I'm a part of called the Ex Nihilo Collective. Follow us on Instagram, you guys. Keep up with us, support us. You know, the Lord is gonna do some amazing things through this group. And basically, our vision is to cultivate a creative rhythm to the way the world sees God. And honestly, that just means we putting stuff out there. Whether it's photography, videography, poetry, spoken word, rap. Honestly, there's no limit when it comes to God and what He's about to do through this group. I flew to New York with 3 other amazing girls to do this piece called If I Knew Then What I Know Now. And we did it for the Stony Brook School in Stony Brook, New York. I think that's kind of like the Long Island-y area. I don't know, it was near a lot of water. So it was more like the edge of New York. Their theme had to do with anti-bullying month. They specifically asked us to do pieces on wisdom or talk about wisdom or do pieces surrounding wisdom. That was kind of what I shared with them before I started the piece. And then I had asked the Lord, I was like, okay, God, give me a new perspective on this piece so that way I can share with people on my channel. And the Lord just told me, talk about the power of your testimony. And I was like, okay, like that sounds so good. People kind of understand what a testimony is, but we don't really like give a purpose or a definition to it. So I really asked the Lord, like, okay, Lord, help me to truly define what a testimony is. So the first definition I saw was that a testimony is a public recounting of a religious conversion or experience. I was like, okay, I don't like that definition at all. But then I saw the next definition, which says a testimony is evidence or proof provided by the existence or appearance of something, and in our case as Christians, someone. Revelation 19:10 says that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So testimonies not only prove the existence of God, but are also prophetic and provide hope to those who are either dealing with what you dealt with or experiencing what you may have experienced, whether they're currently going through it or they themselves have also gone through it in past tense. If we think about a court of law, a testimony either helps or hurts the case of the defendant, and the defendant is the person who's being accused. In our case, Jesus's testimony defended us in the face of the accuser, and the accuser is Satan. He's called the accuser in the Bible. And as Christians, in a way, our testimonies are meant to help the case of Jesus Christ. Now, don't get it twisted, because Jesus does not need defending. His blood speaks for himself. But how can others know about him or what he's done in our lives if we don't share our testimonies, if we don't talk about what Jesus has done? If you look at Romans 10 verses 13 through 15, let's flip over there real quick. Romans chapter 10 verses 13 through 15 says that for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? Someone meaning you. And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news. Now, you don't need a prompting from God to be sent to share your testimony. When you get saved, and when Jesus has done something miraculous in your life, something out of this world or otherworldly, if you will, you have this like burning desire to share what he's done. It's like something you don't want to keep to yourself. That in itself is prompting enough. You don't have to like know that you've received your testimony and that, you know, what God has done for you has been brought into completion, and then you're sitting there like, I don't know if I should share this with people. No, you should share it, because there's someone else who is also dealing with or going through what you just came out of, what God just brought you out of. Another thing is that Paul traveled to different countries and regions, sharing his testimony through the gospel so that others might believe too. And oftentimes when Paul introduces himself in the different books that he wrote in the Bible, he'll oftentimes talk about who he used to be. Paul was the persecuting king, okay? Paul persecuted Christians, killed Christians, took pride in their suffering. He approved and took pride in and watched, I can even say with joy, the stoning of Stephen. The moment Stephen was stoned by religious leaders who didn't like the fact that he proclaimed Jesus. Paul literally stood there and watched, and he enjoyed it. He persecuted Christians. So you'll often see Paul talking about his past and who he used to be. And he talks so heavily and so frequently about who he used to be in order to bring the utmost glory to God. It's as if he's saying, if Jesus could transform someone like me, he can do the same for y'all too. That is what our testimonies are supposed to bring. Our testimonies are supposed to say, hey, I used to be a trash human being. I used to engage in all types of sin. I used to indulge in it. I used to love it. But look where Jesus has brought me from. Look what he has done in my life. I need y'all to see this. This is evidence of the existence of God and truth about who Jesus is, not was, who Jesus is. So there's a difference between a testimony and just spilling tea or telling people what you used to do and who you used to be, basically like gossiping about yourself or like taking pride in your past. This is how you check yourself and maybe gives you the opportunity to talk to others if you notice that within yourself or someone else is sharing a testimony that really isn't a testimony. It's more like, hey, I used to be, you know? Here's one way that you can kind of examine it, but always examine yourself first. Testimonies are meant to highlight and glorify Christ. Highlight and glorify Christ, not your sinful past. So if you find yourself bragging or laughing sometimes, not that, everybody knows me, I love to laugh and I love to joke about who I used to be because I was a mess. But look at what Jesus turned that mess into a messenger. So I laugh at my past in a way that's like, haha, oh, the enemy thought he had me type stuff. But if you find yourself like taking pride in or bragging about your past, you need to check your heart, because you glorify and bring attention to the devil when you share more about what you used to do and who you used to be. It's understandable that you want to be relatable and honest, but your relatability and your honesty should never be at the expense of glorifying Jesus Christ. If you could show a percentage of what you talked about in your testimony, and majority of that percentage is who you used to be, is your past, even going into like nitty-gritty details that not everybody needs to know, because I live by the rule that you be transparent with all and vulnerable to some. We don't all need to know the deep down details of your business. Like, if you tell people what the Lord has called you to tell people, it will bring deliverance. You don't have to give like every single detail in order for them to really understand, like, yeah, I used to be a mess. But always go as the Lord leads. At the end of the day, your testimony is meant to bring glory to Christ and what he did in your life. That is what is prophetic to other people, not the fact that you used to be messy. Many of us wish that we could go back in time and change some decisions we made, or some friendships that we had, or some relationships we had, or just things that we said, you know, just full of regret. And even though that sounds nice or that sounds desirable, you know, if you had the chance to go back in time, the Lord actually revealed to me that that was an instance of pride. It was me saying, man, if I could go back in time and say no to this person, or not go to this place, or not entertain this person, maybe I could be a better Christian. Maybe I could be wiser. Maybe I could be smarter. Maybe I could be holier. I used to think like, man, in middle school, if I decided not to do this, or in high school, if I decided not to mess with this person, like maybe I would have been further along than I am now. And the Lord was like, that is pride, because it was me thinking that I had just and moral decision making enough to do it without Jesus. It was as if I was saying, I could have made the right decisions without you, Lord. Let's say I did have the opportunity to go back in time and I decided to change one of the decisions that I made. Who knows, maybe I could have delayed my salvation. I don't know. I got saved in 2014. I could have got saved in 2030, thinking that if I could go back in time and change what happened, that I could be holier. Newsflash, I didn't get saved till I was 80, you know, and I wouldn't have had the joys of living for Jesus in my youth. So the Lord let me know that the root of that desire was pride. There's this quote that I always see like floating around social media. It's kind of corny, but I like it. Like, I think it's cute. And it truly is honest. It says, if you think you've blown God's plan for your life, rest in this. You, my beautiful friend, are not that powerful. And that is so, so true. We don't have the power to take away the plans God has for our lives. He uses us and his will gets done regardless of whether we are obedient and disobedient. We're the ones who decide which route we want to take, the obedient route or the disobedient route. But we do not have the power to remove the gifts that God has given us. We don't have the power to take away the blessings God has given us. We don't have the power to change any decision in our lives. All we have is this word to follow, and it's truly all we need. So Jeremiah 29:11, a lot of people know this verse and a lot of people don't. I never like to make cliches out of the word of God. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you," and this is God speaking, "plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." If God said it, he meant it, point blank, period. Ain't no argument, can't nobody say nothing else, period. God said it and he meant it. Your past is your past for a reason. You uniquely went through or are going through what you're going through for a reason. And in this life, there are so many stumbling blocks, so many tragedies and temptations, so many traumatic experiences that have been set up before you were even born, that have been set up to tear you down, to break you. And yes, some of these situations are orchestrated by the devil, because the word says that he only comes to kill, steal, and destroy. That's all he comes to do. So if you recognize those things happening in your life, you know whose hand is doing it. It's not the hand of God. It is the enemy flourishing in a sinful world. So yes, some of those situations are orchestrated by the devil, but most, if not all, are actually developed from our innate sinful nature and its desire to do what is contrary to God and what pleases him. But Genesis 50:20, Joseph says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people." And that is the purpose of your testimony. That is the very outline of your testimony. What the enemy intended for evil, God turned it around and made it good. Let me even change the meaning of that. What the enemy intended for evil, God's original plan was good. And guess what? God's will be done, which means it will be good. Romans 8:28 doesn't say everything works for our good, like some people like to shorten it. That is not biblical. Romans 8:28 says that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Yes, trials will come, temptations will never cease. But one thing that is true is that God will always provide a way out. That's what his word says. And once we choose his way out, that is when our testimonies begin. And God is not a man that he should lie. So if there's anyone you can believe, anyone you can trust, anybody that you can be confident in, it is God and his word. So yeah, truly trust in the Lord, because he'll never fail you. So yeah, this piece is gonna come out next weekend, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. I'm excited for this testimony to be prophetic to you guys in anything that I dealt with, that you may be dealing with as well, or maybe that you also overcame. Share it in the comments, or email me, or message me on any of my social media accounts. I love reading what you guys have learned through these videos, through these intro videos. So if you learn or receive anything from this video or for my next piece coming up, then just let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk with you guys. I'd love to just praise the Lord for your lives with y'all. So yeah, excited for it to come out. But yeah, I'll see you guys next week with the piece. Love y'all. Bye.